Hello?
Hey, Paul.
You're looking very regal.
How are you?
Yeah, figured I'd clean up today, you know.
Sorry, I'm bumming it today.
Oh, then bye. We'll see this
I'm,
jacket a little bit.
I'm gonna be the everyday man at this.
All right.
Just talking to the people.
All right. Well, I'm killing the jacket then. I'm good with that. Thank you.
I'm going to keep my jacket on. Hello.
Yeah,
Was that Craig?
It is. Is that Kim?
It is. I don't see you. Are you going to be on camera as well?
Am I not showing on camera? Hang on.
I'm trying to view everyone.
GoToMeeting is silly. You got to click on webcams at the top and then tell it to share your webcam.
Can you see me now?
We do not see you.
That would be a problem.
You won't see me because I am on a non-webcam computer today. Just my voice.
Hey everyone, it's Megan. Just so you know, I did hit the start broadcast button, which is normally I would wait until the start of the webinar. So that's my fault. But when people start to join, which no one is yet, they will see you. So as long as they can join, you just say, hey, we're just gonna wait till, you know, the start of it to kick things off. That's all. So no trash talking while people get on, you know.
thank you, Megan.
Okay. Thanks, Megan.
No problem.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Megan.
of course. Kimberly, let me just send that other invite as well. 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
You can invite as an
Please.
organizer or a presenter or just
Yeah,
to
he can
attend.
be an
I'll just
organizer. He can come on as that.
add him as a panelist. Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna flip it. I gotta put the jacket. It is cold in here today. Damn. Man, alive.
Yeah.
My sunroom.
Hey,
So
guys,
this.
not allowing me to share my screen or my video cam.
Do you see the webcam drop down?
Yeah, no, I'm selecting share my camera, but it's giving me an error message saying that I'm already
You
in
may
use.
want to log out and log back in.
All right, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Who's having trouble? Was that Craig?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he is as an organizer. I just want to double check that. So as long as he's coming in as an organizer and not, you know, as a attendee, that's maybe the only
Correct.
thing.
I resent him the organizer email
The right link.
about an
Okay.
hour ago.
Thing that sometimes happens. So, okay. And Kimberly, are you presenting? You have presenting capabilities right now?
No, I don't. Is there anything to present? I don't think there is.
No, I want to make sure it's showing you as the organizer and presenter, so you have the ability to share if you need to. But
Okay.
you're in
Good
control.
morning, Susan. Can't hear you.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. All right. No, the only thing we're going to do is a poll, and we'll do that after everyone's been introduced.
Okay, great. All right, Kimberly, I am on another call, so I'm going to just mute myself if you guys are good to go.
We are. Thanks for your help.
Sure, no problem.
Hey, Keon, I'm Steven. Craig speaks very highly of you.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well, sir.
Where are you in the world?
I'm in Atlanta. I live in Marietta.
Welcome to Atlanta. I'm in Hampton.
Nice. I was just down there playing golf 2 weeks ago, I think.
At the golf course?
Crystal Lake?
Yes, that's.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of the name fast enough.
Yep. Yeah, we did
Hey,
a charity
Craig, there you
tournament
go.
down there, so it was a good time.
Hi,
Nice course.
Craig.
I'm back.
Looking spiffy today, I must say.
Well, I'm hoping I'm not breaking anybody's cameras. So.
I don't think so.
Hey, Keon, either today or tomorrow, I've got some other answers for your question you posed to me the other day.
Okay, I can dig it.
I'll reach out to you.
Everything
Hi, thank
happens in
you
due
all for
time.
joining. We'll be starting here just momentarily.
Be right back, folks.
Hi, thanks for joining. We'll be starting in 5 minutes.
Craig, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great.
Hi, thanks for joining. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Hi, thanks for joining. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. right, thanks for joining. The webinar will begin now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Cybersecurity Awareness Month roundtable discussion. I'm your host, Craig Sikowski, a senior partner in ConnectIT, offering IT services and solutions. We'll be discussing questions regarding incident response planning, cybersecurity responsibilities at the C-level, best practices, and other fun topics. I'm honored to be sharing the time today with our featured panelists, Paul Robinson and Keon Williams, who will also be introducing themselves. Keon?
You mentioned Paul first, but you gave me the honor of introducing myself. So, hi everybody, I'm Keon Williams. I run a professional services company that specializes in cybersecurity strategy, program management, and privacy, which is a fun and interesting topic. The work allows me to travel around the world and work with national governments, large companies, and small businesses. So I hope the things that I've seen in my travels add value to the conversation today.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Paul?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Paul Robinson with IGI, National Cybersecurity Director here for Business Development. Have been blessed to be in the space since 2009, working with organizations around governance, risk, compliance, cybersecurity, and just really blessed to be on this panel with these folks here today.
Great, thanks, guys. So I thought we would start off with a few questions this morning, just kind of doing a polling. And you're going to see that pop up, like to see your response. A few of the questions we have, number one, has your company created a budget for cybersecurity? I'll give everybody just a few minutes to take that. Looking for your responses. And we'll let you know how everybody votes after this.
Great, so it looks like we have 50% yes and 50% no.
Ooh, good time they're here then. This is good topic for today. And then let's do one more. Does your company have an incident response plan? This one I'm going to be really curious to see. Not sure if that's showing up. Kim, are we doing that poll?
Yes, I have it up.
Okay, I
Are
just
y'all
didn't
able
see
to
it.
see? Yeah, I don't see it. Hold on, let me try it again.
If you don't, this is probably a good time to create an incident response plan. Give you the extra time.
Doesn't look like the second one launched.
That's okay. Well, we'll get back to that. So, Keon and Paul, thanks for the intros. Yeah, when I'm on the street, I have a lot of people asking me various questions. Clients are asking me various questions. So I'm going to ask you the same and looking for your advice. Since Keon, I'm sorry, I was switching the order. You went first. Paul, I'm going to give you a chance first. So Paul, I've got a question for you. How would you explain the importance of utilization of a multi-factor authentication system to someone in a marketing department? Can you help me break that down into layman terms?
Yeah, sure, Craig. And you bring up a very good point. It's going to kind of be my theme as I go through the questions and answer session here. We really have to make cybersecurity applicable to everybody that's involved. I think a lot of people are intimidated by cybersecurity because everybody thinks it's zeros and ones, and it's the matrix kind of things that we see on the screen, or the guy with the hoodie with no face, no face on, and people get intimidated by that. So to kind of make an analogy around it and to simplify MFA, Seinfeld, they just rebooted it on Netflix, which is great. It's one of my favorite shows, and they actually have MFA in most episodes that they have. So if you think about where Jerry lives, or even if you don't watch Seinfeld, you think of an apartment building. If someone comes to the front of the apartment building, they buzz a button and they say, they buzz it. Jerry says, "Who is it?" They say, "Oh, George or Elaine." He lets them in, and then they come to his front door, and then he looks through the people and says, okay, this is who the person said it was. And that's really what MFA is. It's making sure that there's an extra layer of security on top of letting people into your environment or getting access to critical things inside of the environment, like data or applications, things of that nature. And so MFA is, to me, one of the most important and vital things that an organization can implement. It's giving that added layer of protection. It's protecting you against. Kian and I had a conversation last week around what are the biggest threats that are out there. Brute force attempts are just they're going crazy these days, and this is one layer of protection that you can add on to protecting against that. MFA is becoming more applicable and easy to implement inside of organizations. I don't know if anybody remembers running around with one of those RSA fobs back in the day. And of course, we didn't put in our key ring, so we leave it in the bathroom or whatever, and it would be a mess. The technology has really expanded to where we're now able to do it through our phones or through other methods that are of ease. So hopefully that answers it for you. Again, want to make it, these kind of types of conversations very simple and easy for folks in marketing or sales or operations to understand the importance of tools such as MFA.
No, I think that's a great response. I totally agree. I mean, you've got to have a 360 view, right? And you want everybody to be protected. So I think MFA is definitely necessary. So Kian, I think the other question, since we're in a planning season and goals, how do you see security teams' goals contributing to the overall business goals?
It depends on how much people invest. We opened the conversation today with the poll about the companies that have a budget for cybersecurity. And out of the people who responded, 60% said yes and 60% said no. But at the same time, there have been numerous studies this year that say that while attacks are increasing in frequency and severity, cybersecurity budgets remain largely unchanged as a percent of revenue. And so the attacks are becoming more pervasive, more difficult to address, but nobody's investing more money if they're investing any at all. And so the way that the cybersecurity team contributes is going to be limited if they don't have the tools, if they don't have the technology, if they don't have enough headcount to solve the problem. So I think the beginning of the answer to the question is really that security and technology leaders have to compel their organizations to invest properly. That is a very important business discussion that has to take place as a prerequisite before you can really start digging into what is the team doing, how is the team adding value, how do you measure their performance and justify the investments because they're demonstrating that they're doing something for the organization.
Great. No, I appreciate that. And then Paul, I'm going to switch it back to you. I've got some friends that are brand new CISOs. We're seeing some of the younger people coming up and being promoted into a CISO position. So day one, what's the first thing you would do being appointed a CISO into an organization?
Yeah, I've not been blessed with the opportunity to be a CISO, but I've had the opportunity to be engaged with CISOs that have held some very powerful positions in the industry, in charge of top 10 healthcare organizations, top 10 banks. And, it's interesting. I think back to a conversation that I had with one CISO who was in charge of about 70,000 employees. And Pros is kind of a similar question to him when we talked about talking about this. And I said, well, what do you tell people you do? And he says, I'm an inside sales guy. He said that's what I am. He's like, I'm an inside sales guy. So going back to day one, think of the title that you hold there: Chief Information Security Officer. You're the chief, you're the head, you're the captain, you're the general of the organization when it comes to security, when it comes to risk and compliance, and ultimately making sure that the business is not only surviving, but also thriving as well. So day one, in my opinion, and in the expertise that I've gained from CISOs, you have to start building that internal champion of people inside of your organization to help you to promote the goals and visions that you have. A CISO, if you're going in day one as a CISO and you don't have a plan or you don't have an idea of what the organization is, you're going to fail. And I don't mean to be, harsh or rude by that. I'm a Northeasterner, so I can come across strongly sometimes, but you're going to fail. So you should have those goals and visions in place, have some cursory knowledge of the organization, and then it's really important to start socializing that throughout multiple departments. We get locked in so many times that security is just a technology piece, and we go to the CIO, we go to network engineers and IT folks. You brought up marketing with MFA. There's big pieces in marketing. If you're going through a whole rebranding and your marketing department is hit because you don't have controls in place, that's going to cost the organization money. Go to marketing, go to go to the break room and just strike up conversations, because you need the people to execute on the plan. We talk about cybersecurity being a people problem. I don't think we go real deep into that. We think about people that are clicking on phishing links and people that are leaving laptops in cars, and that's all good and well, but you need your soldiers, you need the men and women of the organization to help execute that program. So day one, you have to start gaining that trust, gaining that vision, making your goals and visions that you have applicable to the different departments that are there. Don't talk to operations like you would with sales. Don't talk to technology like you would with legal. Make sure that your message is very crisp for the whole organization to know, we're protecting jobs here. We're protecting our business here. And then start with that, and then the other things should flow from there.
Good answer. I mean, it's challenging for everybody coming up. And I think that every day is a brand new day. So adding on to that, Keon, I keep on seeing articles. I read an article, matter of fact, you had a great LinkedIn referring back to zero trust models. I hear a lot about zero trust models in overall discussion in cybersecurity arena. What are your thoughts?
Well, people will probably find my thoughts controversial depending on what they do related to zero trust, but I think zero trust is really just marketing. I had a cool opportunity earlier in my career where I was the security executive in charge of a federal agency's zero trust environment. And they didn't call it zero trust, but it was just a secure environment where we achieved all the things that people are promoting as marketing hype and making it seem like it's very easy and very turnkey. What we ultimately did was we developed a public key infrastructure system internally. We used digital certificates. Everything that was allowed to communicate had a certificate so that in advance, can this system communicate or is it not allowed to communicate because it doesn't have the right credentials? And we basically created a inventory of keys that every person and every computer system and every networking component had to present so that they can open the door and come inside and communicate. It was very robust. It required a lot of effort. It required a lot of planning in advance, and it required significant maintenance, because whenever you're doing encryption, managing security keys becomes your biggest point of overhead and your biggest point of frustration, but it added value because it was for the government and we were protecting things that were very sensitive. Then you take that concept and you apply it to a commercial environment. Many organizations have their environment in the cloud. Many organizations have technology that works, but they have no idea how it works. They don't know how everything is strung together. They don't understand the technical details of everything that allows what they're doing to function. If I go to Salesforce, I know that Salesforce works and it has my CRM. I have no idea how it functions on the back end. And then if I have a programming interface that allows data from Salesforce to be sucked into Outlook so that I can send the right people the right messaging campaigns, well, that's great. But if we start talking about having a zero trust, well, how much do I trust Salesforce? How much do I trust the programming that did the connection between Salesforce and Outlook? How much do I trust Microsoft and Outlook? And as we add more and more things together, it's expanding the amount of trust that I have to have for multiple organizations that I know very little about, that are all storing, processing, and transmitting my information. So I would argue that the first step in doing zero trust is, do you completely understand all your business processes? Have you done business process management? Do you have an inventory of all your processes, of all of your data, of all of the technology that stores, processes, and transmits that data? Do you understand where your critical failures are? And then you start layering on top of that, what are your regulatory obligations? What promises have you made to your customers, to your suppliers, and your strategic partners? And as I continue unraveling the onion, so to speak, it becomes very clear that the process is not easy as vendors make it out to be, and it requires significant planning in advance so that when I do apply that great technology that produces what people are calling zero trust, we trust that it is working, that it's producing the outcome that we're looking for, and the data that we really care about is safe and it justifies whatever investment we're making in that solution.
Good feedback. And I know, Paul, you and I have talked about this at length too, and it's always a fun topic. It'll never go away. I don't think anytime soon.
Yeah,
It's
that's why I like this roundtable, because Kian handled that very diplomatically. I'm a little bit more fired up when it comes to zero trust, but to reinforce what Kian said, don't get caught up in the nomenclature, don't get caught up in the minutia of it. Identify what it is that you're looking to solve inside of that, and work through that. So Kian, that was fantastic. It was really good.
Love it. So Paul, I'm going to switch it back on to you. And being an agent, we provide different solutions to our clients, and new tool sets come up. And I'm hearing a lot about machine learning and AI. We offer that to our clients. But do you think this is really something that's going to strengthen cybersecurity, or do you think it's going to provoke a new attack surface?
Yeah, I'll pause there real quick, because I believe we have a lot of security professionals on the line here, and there's this battle, there's this schism, there's this debate between technology and not having technology. I mean, there's a battle. It's like, oh, you can't throw everything in a rack and hope that everything's going to be okay. Or people say, yeah, go to Gartner, go to the top right and put everything in your rack and you'll be fine. As unfortunate, in our society today, we have extreme thinking. So I really want to bring this back to the center here and say that technology is it's a great tool to have in our cybersecurity program. It's 33% of the puzzle. We have people, process, and we have technology. And I know, Craig, that you support some great technologies. And I know Stephen Stull is on the line here. Support great technologies to help organizations. Where the challenge happens is when we start to use it as a crutch. When we just say, okay, I see blinky shiny lights in my data center. I have these nice GUIs that are out here that are giving me reports. I can go to bed at night, and then you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with the help desk on fire because something has happened. So it really is coming into the middle. Machine learning and AI is not necessarily a new concept. I remember back in about 2014, 2015. Companies started to sprout out. I'm not going to mention any of them. I'm not giving any free marketing today for them, but they started to have this machine learning idea and getting things in place with that. So there are great technologies, and Craig, I'll leave it to you to share those specific technologies, with the folks on the call here or your clients to talk about that. But really good automated technologies that have artificial intelligence on top of that. Couple of things that I do want to warn and bring out with caution. One is, again, making sure that you understand the power of these tools. These are very powerful tools. The tools are supposed to work for the organization. The organization is not supposed to work for the tools. So when investigating a tool that's going to have artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities, we hear all the DRs, MDR, XDR, and everything like that. Make sure that your policies, your procedures, your teams are able to have these things to function well inside of the environment. The worst thing you could do is buy top right from the Gartner, the Gartner quadrant. You spend a ton of money and you realize that you needed FTE to run these technologies and tools. It's really an unfortunate thing that organizations go through. So, gain the guidance, gain wisdom from people to come alongside of you inside the organization, maybe outside the organization, to see exactly how these tools fit. The other piece I do want to add there, Craig, is that while the good side is getting access to machine learning and AI, the bad side is getting access to machine learning and AI. So that's something that we need to be very careful to understand. Malware, ransomware, it's now becoming polymorphic. Malware is now replicating malware, and that's sounds like it's a breaking news. It's not. It's been doing that for a long time. But understand that our adversaries, the criminals that are looking to shut businesses down, to take paychecks out of organizations, to monetize from their criminal activity, have access to these tools and technologies as well. So it's really a combative way of navigating through these things. It's difficult. It's hard. There's a lot of people on the other side that are looking to wreak havoc inside of organizations. But building that program and executing on the technologies that you get to combat that is really one of the best strategies that I've seen.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think Paul, you did a great job on that answer. So the other part is, Ken, I come from a cloud background, and people always look up on the cloud, but it's not really up in the cloud. But I hear a lot about the industry and people moving to the cloud. They feel like the cloud's going to be able to help them secure their environments. It's going to be their silver bullet. But the cloud also has a lot of attack surfaces, just as Paul was mentioning. What's your feelings whether the cloud really is going to help people or just open up other attack possibilities?
Well, so I was excited to throw shade on artificial intelligence. So I am not only going to answer your question, but I'm going to tie two other things into it all at one time. And so the cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of these automated things all boil down to a similar problem. And so for those of you who do not have computer science degrees, there was a guy named Ken Thompson back in the 80s who did some great computer science work. But one of the pivotal things that he wrote was a paper called Trusting Trust. And the question that he asked back in the 80s was, to what extent should one trust a statement that a program is free of Trojan horses? And the issue came down to, if you didn't build the compiler that tells the application code how to run, how do you know that the compiler isn't injecting things that you weren't looking for? And it's how you get into vulnerability assessments and penetration testing and all the things that we do to verify that things are clean and safe. But there comes a point in technology, which is starting to answer the question about AI and machine learning and the cloud, where if you put all of your trust in technology that you didn't build and that you didn't create, there is an inherent risk that is associated with the fact that you have no idea what's going on with the things that are managing your data. It's the reason that the Department of Defense was very slow to adopt cloud services, and the federal government of the United States was slow to adopt cloud services. And actually, once you leave North America, globally, cloud adoption is taking place at a much slower pace than the United States and Canada, and to an extent, Mexico. And so there is an issue of trust in technology where people are saying, I am not sure that I can completely trust solutions that are hosting my data, because if something goes wrong, I can't do anything about it. When you add on top of that some of the issues that you're running into with application programming interfaces and small pieces of code like Heartbleed that lead to significant problems for organizations, now we're back to my original conversation about understanding your business processes. Every time you give me the opportunity, I'm always going to bring it back to the business. Some business processes can operate effectively in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty. If I'm doing sales and marketing, if I'm doing customer relationship management, if it's data that I can reproduce, or if it's data that I can copy in multiple locations, and I have more confidence that we can still operate even if something happens. Like if I lose everything in Salesforce, I still have all my critical contacts in Outlook, nobody's going to die. But if I'm working in an aluminum plant or any kind of manufacturing environment that has expandable materials, aluminum, concrete, steel, all of those items, if the plant goes down because the automation that I'm depending on stops working, then those materials start to expand and they tear everything up. And so then you have a $1 billion aluminum manufacturing plant that no longer works because automation broke. And so the thing that people have to consider is not about, is the cloud safe or is it not safe, but how much risk am I willing to accept based on the lack of knowledge that I have about the vendors that I rely upon and the effort that they're applying to security, because they're providing security built into commodity services that they're offering, but their incentives are very different than my business incentive to make sure that everything keeps working, that I can keep delivering the product, service, or result that I promised to my client. And so the summary of that long discussion, because I just wanted people to understand academically that I have no beef with the cloud whatsoever, but people need to make informed decisions about what they put where. If you're comfortable allowing somebody else to manage your data, the cloud is a great solution because the cloud offers a lot of things that organizations generally don't have access to. Huge security teams, resilience, redundancy, all kinds of other things. But if your data is extremely sensitive, or it's the most important data that you ever had, or it's your secret sauce and you would cease to exist without it, maybe in addition to the cloud, you have a good backup strategy so that you always maintain control over that super secret recipe that allows you to be in business, but that control is in your environment where you can keep a close eye on it. You know what's happening to it. You know that nobody's going to take it, which now takes us back to security budgets. You need to invest enough money in people, process, and technology to accomplish good oversight, good risk management, good security for your data, for your systems, and for your processes, regardless of where they exist, whether it's in your office or it's on the cloud in somebody else's environment.
So Kim, I'm going to add on to that just for a second, get your feedback. You know, we hear a lot of things about incident response plans and doing some of those to add in. How often do you think people should be taking a look at their platforms and cloud, the procedures and the processes put in place? Is that something they do once a year, twice a year, on a regular checkup?
Well, so I teach CISOs in a really cool program that is focused on professional certification for IT and security executives. And one of the things that we talk about when I'm the teacher is that incident response is not really something that you practice once in a blue moon. The frequency of your practice depends on the impact of the business system. So my official recommendation is that if the business system is significant to your operations, I would practice responding to incidents at least once per quarter. I mean, I do everything else once per quarter for important things. I do financial reporting, I report to the regulators. If it's important, you should test your response to an incident on that important thing once per quarter. If it is less important, maybe I stretch it out and do it every 6 months. If we really don't care that much, but we have an obligation as a fiduciary to make sure that everything is working, then the least important, I would check once a year. And then if you use a qualitative scale like low, moderate, or high, my high systems I'm checking every quarter. My moderate systems I'm checking at least once every 6 months. My systems of low impact or low value I'm checking once per year. But it allows me to schedule something that is appropriate based on the risk and the concern that I have and how important those systems or that technology or those business processes are to my operations.
Mhm. Yeah, and one thing I would definitely add there, and it goes along, Kian, with your mantra that you have with incident response and testing those systems and whatnot. The business needs to be involved as a whole with this. You know, I think some organizations get locked into, okay, we're going to do incident response plan testing. We're just going to do the technology piece. Oh, you know, servers on the fritz because of malware or whatever, and it's just narrowed down to technology. It's increasing the business size of that as well, because legal is going to play a role in this. Finance is going to play a role in it. Do we pay the ransom?
Yeah.
Do we not pay the ransom? We have a $10 million bill now from Microsoft because we have to rebuild our systems. They're involved with it. So in that planning, and again, this is just learning from experience and being involved in these, as I'm sure Kian and Craig, you've been involved in as well, making sure the business is at the table for these testing elements for the business to make sure everybody is prepared for that unfortunate act that could take place.
Yeah, no, Paul, and that's the good thing about IGI. I know they also offer services as well that can help customers that may not have the right people on board, whether it's fractional, what have you. So that's a good point. Not everybody has to be fully onboarded with all the personnel. We offer services like that. So that's a great response. I appreciate that. So talking about some of the policies and procedures, Paul, I'm going to aim that back at you since you're the last one that was providing you feedback. I hear a lot about people bringing on devices or device policies. What are your thoughts about bringing on devices?
What's the Beauty and the Beast song? Tale as old as time, song as old as wine. I mean, oh, MDM, mobile device management, bring your own device. I mean, it's been since day one since I've been in the industry. It's crazy. It's crazy from the perspective of it. Nobody knows what it means. Everybody has all of these things in place. I remember when I first started in the industry, there was a lot of mobile device management products that were out because people wanted to do a full days of work on their iPhone or their Android. I'm like, so you're doing spreadsheets, you're doing reports, you're doing all these things on this little device. Okay, I guess so. But really, what it comes down to, and this is the focal point, an organization's really just concerned about the data or the applications that are mission critical to the business that are on the phone. So I have my phone here. If something happens to my phone and my family pictures from Mexico are all wiped out, but the business data and applications are safe, my company's not going to care. Like I'm going to be upset. My wife is going to be upset. The kids are going to be upset. But the business itself is going to be like, just as long as our data and our applications are secure, that's all that matters. So when we're developing a mobile device management or device policy, really center it around the data. I think a data classification or a data flow diagram exercise goes in line with it. Okay, we have people that are off site in the last 18 months. The work from home is not new. I hate organizations and businesses that try to market it. Oh, this revolutionary thing of work from home. We've been working from home for decades at this point. But it's become more mainstream and how that's happened. And a lot of people inside of that took a step back and said, okay, devices, we'll take it out the window. What's going on with the data? How is it flowing? Who has access to it? How are we blocking it from going from our domain controllers and our systems internally to public Gmail or to public Outlook, a personal email account? So when we're developing these policies and procedures, two things that I would say is one is make sure that we're focusing in on the data and the applications and controlling that and making sure that's fine. The second piece, and I would encourage everybody here from a security professional perspective, this is the one that's going to make you unpopular. You're not going to make everybody happy with whatever the policies and procedures are. You have to have that conviction when presenting it, when explaining it, to say, okay, this is the right thing. I had a CISO of a very large higher education institution that I'm pretty close with, and he was telling me that they put 4-digit passcodes on all devices. If you wanted access to email, you had to put 4-digit passcodes. This is years ago. And one of the department heads, I think the department head of biomedicine, came in and said, either you get this off my phone or I'm going to have you fired by the end of the day. And so, he was taken aback. He's like, how what's going on here? It's this simple 4-digit passcode. But what he did was that he explained to this gentleman, and you explained to the men and women of the organization the reason why these policies are in place. It's not to take away your Facebook activity, your Candy Crush activity. That's an HR issue. That's a productivity issue. But it's really making sure that what we do on our phones, the business owns the data. The business owns the applications. Your personal device is a conduit to access that. And so you do have a responsibility to the organization of how you're disseminating information, storing information, transmitting information throughout or outside the organization. So making sure, again, as security professionals, that we speak with conviction. We know what we're talking about. We're going to back it up, and this is one of those things you're not going to make everybody happy with, and making sure that you execute on that as best as possible.
I think being an ex-DBA from way back, the first thing you do is take a backup before you proceed anywhere. I think that's rule number one. So Kian, this is a perfect intro for what I'm going to ask next. So let's say somebody does bring their device on. There are things on there. Let's say Paul's wedding pictures have a corrupt system in there and didn't take it off his phone. Device is on. So what would be the first 10-minute look after discovering a breach? What action would you take?
I'm gonna put on my lawyer hat and say it depends. If I were in charge, it would not have happened the way that we're describing, because I would have some type of technology that separates personal information from company information. And I'm saying this not because I'm selling it, but because it's what I do. And so I run my company. As the owner of the company, I make a lot of the decisions about what technology I'm going to use. And I love container solutions and micro-segmentation solutions. And so as I have employees coming in and out of the organization, they have access to what they need. It is specifically assigned. When they leave the organization, I turn it off, and they don't have access to corporate data anymore, but I've never interfered with their phone. And so I'm a Microsoft person, but Microsoft Intune works very well to separate somebody's personal life from their business life on their mobile devices, whether it's a laptop or it is a phone or a tablet. And so my corporate policy, if anybody wants to copy me and just do what I'm doing, is that we don't provide company-owned hardware. Employees can use whatever they want. There are specific ways that employees can access data, and that is the only way that they can access it. And what we have approved is a secure method that doesn't allow any kind of data leakage. Employees aren't downloading sensitive files onto their personal devices. There's a lot of control. That model was produced when I worked for the government, where we used VMware and people couldn't take things out of the VMware container. I am considering using Microsoft virtual desktops in the future. There's a roadmap to roll it out, but it takes it one step further, where if I use Outlook on the cell phone, people can get what they need. If they need to get on a computer and look at something, all of the data is in an environment that I control, and then we have no issues. We simply disconnect it from the user's laptop or tablet or mobile device, and everything is a-okay everywhere that we're operating. And I'm mentioning solutions that I use because I can talk knowledgeably about them, but there's an entire marketplace of solutions that allow organizations to separate company data from individual data. And I am so invested in allowing my employees to use what they need to use that I reimburse them a small amount each month because I'm helping them pay for their internet, because they can't work without having the internet to do their work. And so if you get together with everybody, if you think about what are we trying to accomplish, how is that best going to be accomplished, and then what are the security solutions and tools that reinforce what we're trying to do, every business person in the company, regardless of their role, can do their job. We still have a model of security that protects our data and customer data and prevents losing things that we care about and are important. And I think that every kind of company, regardless of whether it's manufacturing or banking or commercial or anything else, can find the right mix of solutions and approaches that meet their needs.
I think it's great. I think it's, with people, especially now with the pandemic, working from home, they have limited devices at times, and sometimes they use their work device. And I think the policies put that in place and kind of prevent and give them the guidelines as well. So I think it's a great answer. Paul, I think you would also agree to that.
Nothing to add. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect.
But Paul, I'm going to add something.
Actually, just a quick question. Ken, you brought up VDI, Microsoft VDI, and you're building out a roadmap to that. I know some organizations have gone full bore into that. Is there a reason for your pragmatic approach with VDI?
Well, so the government agency that I work for, we had 85,000 people deployed globally in 36 countries.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Every user had the same experience. So it reduces the burden on the help desk. It reduces the security burden because you configure all your security controls the same. So then our primary concern was configuration of the environment, secure remote access. And so where Craig was talking about attack surface earlier, complexity makes security more difficult. If I use a virtual desktop infrastructure and every desktop is configured exactly the same, and every user is logging into the same environment, and every user only has one way to access corporate data, well, it's very easy for me to see that something is anomalous, that it's out of order, that it's not behaving like it's supposed to. It's very easy to distinguish between an incident and something that was just out of order. It makes the entire problem much easier to manage, which ultimately reduces your security cost, because all of the money, time, and energy that I've invested in managing technology has reduced my risk, and it makes oversight and governance much more easy and much and much more straightforward.
Great, thank you.
I think that was a call for you, Ken, coming in. The CISO loved that response. So Paul, I'm going to add on to that. You know, we're talking about things coming from the outside, right? So as a CEO, I don't sleep well at night knowing about insider attacks. Help me sleep better regarding insider attacks.
Yeah, I don't know many CEOs that sleep well at all. I've been exposed to several CEOs that have mentored me and have taken me under their wing to kind of coach me through my business life. And these men and women are wired very differently. So they're always on alert. They're always, paranoid. Like, okay, what's going to go on? You're talking to them face to face, but you could see 15 different things going on in their head. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that CEOs across the board are terrified of a cybersecurity incident, or if it's determined a breach at a certain point. A couple of reasons why. One is, the responsibility that a CEO has to its employees, to its customers, to the board. That's a very heavy weight to hold, and a cyber attack knocks all three of those things out. Your customer and client base, their confidence has been shaken in you. Your internal employees, their confidence has been shaken because it could be some of their information that was compromised. We worked on an incident earlier this year where the attackers stole every employee's 401k information, their username, password, their account number, just gone. So imagine being a CEO and having to sit down and talk to your employees about that. The board as well, because you're managing upwards. So how is the CEO supporting the board from that perspective with that? So when we talk about insider and outsider threats to an organization, these are the things that really terrify the CEO. From an outsider perspective, it's classic. You have cyber criminal gangs all over the world looking to gain access to to the system inside of an organization, not to do anything. There's some geopolitical things that are out there to cause some embarrassment, but they're looking for monetary value inside of an organization that they could flip to make millions of dollars, or to deploy ransomware in a system and to hold an organization hostage, from that perspective. So protecting the external piece from it. The insider piece is tricky because there are two components of that. You have the foolishness that some people do. People don't take time and think when they're accessing data or clicking on a link or responding to an email that's asking for sensitive information when it really is a criminal that's out there. So you have the foolishness that's out there, and really that comes in with just taking your time, taking that gut check and saying, hey, this doesn't seem like this came from the CFO. Picking up a phone, texting them, saying, hey, did you send this? Haste makes waste in cybersecurity. Take that time to not be hasty in your response or in giving things, but really think these things through. The piece of malicious internal threats, that's a piece that's difficult, and that's really where the CISO, I talked earlier about the CISO partnering with other pieces of the organization. The CISO and HR should be really tight, and having HR understand the security policies, the plans, procedures that we have in place, making sure that's executed, and making sure we're vetting out people properly as well. The hiring process is so archaic these days. There's some revolution that's going through it, but it's kind of archaic, and it's allowing people with insider, issues with the organization to make things worse, kind of slip through the cracks. There was a couple of articles back in 2019 where criminal organizations were making side deals with customer service reps of organizations to say, hey, I'll give you $50,000, just give me this database. You hope that we're not trusting people, but we are trusting people, and we're like, oh, no one's going to do that in my organization. But you got a customer service rep that's not making a ton of money, that has bills to pay, mouths to feed. There's a moral dilemma in there. I could sit here and say, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm a good Bible boy. I'm not going to do that. But when you're put in that situation, you take the full picture. The wheels could start turning. So it's making sure that we're vetting vetting these things out up front. CEOs have a lot to lose with a cyber attack. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about in heavily regulated environments, heavy litigation that could take place. Going back to jobs, CEO, you're not finding that in your local newspaper as from in the help wanted ad. These are very lucrative jobs to get with multiple rounds of interviews and very high prestige. It's not easy to get a CEO job. So if you're fired as a CEO, and then on top of that, have the optics associated with that you're negligent with customer or employee data, it's hard to replace a CEO salary. So these are the things that they're concerned about. So if you are working in security, if you're a provider like myself, or Kian, or Craig, those discussions are really important, to manage upwards. I'm a big believer in managing upwards and making the lives of my boss and my boss's boss easier when we're navigating these through. So if CEO, he or she is in that place and you work in an organization, get some time on their calendar. If you're a security professional, say, hey, I want to partner with you. These are our people are our biggest threat. Let's strategize in a way to make sure that the business is safe. Don't go in there talking about subnets, or don't go in there with a Nessus report with 255 written all over it. It's going to just kind of fall on deaf ears. Like, oh, I don't understand it. But talk about the business, talk about the risk that's involved with not putting in policies and procedures in place to protect the organization against foolish employees or malicious employees, and work together from that perspective.
That was a boat full of great information. I appreciate that. So I'm going to ask you a question that one of my clients recently asked. They're a very small group, and they're just starting to put their incident response planning. Should HR be a part of their practice sessions and planning sessions, Paul?
As far as for the planning session perspective?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Again, we want that organizational wide view for cybersecurity. One of my esteemed colleagues that I worked with in a previous life had it best. We want to expand the bus of responsibility of cybersecurity, where the driver isn't the only one that's responsible for making sure that it gets safe to the destination. The passengers need to be there, either reading a map or maybe on their app on their phone saying, hey, there's a storm ahead, and really have a whole group inside of there that's making sure that the bus is getting there to safety. I have a common question that I ask when I get involved with multiple people inside of an organization. We're all sitting around the table. I'll ask the question, okay, who's in charge of data security here? CISO might raise his hand, CIO might raise their hands, and I just start pointing around the room. It's you, it's you, it's you, it's you. Everybody is responsible for the data inside of this organization. Everybody is responsible for the security inside of the organization. And when you're inside your domain, you have to look at it from that perspective of a cybersecurity perspective. It's similar to physical security. We do the same things and that's the thing that blows my mind. And Kian and Craig, I don't know if it blows your mind as well, but it's like there's just this mental block of we'll do all these things from a physical security perspective, and HR is involved in it, and marketing's involved in it, and even business development's involved in it. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's like, whoa, let the CISO do the security awareness training. No, HR, you might need to be involved in this, or and just kind of, again, just expanding that level of responsibility throughout the organization.
Great response. Anything to add, Kian? I think you're nailing it, Paul. That's great.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people overlook in general is they misunderstand the role of human resources. The purpose of human resources is to equip all people in the organization to be successful, and part of being successful is contributing to all of the critical activities. And so what we're really asking is, does the organization in question consider security to be a critical activity that requires everybody's involvement? Or is security going to be something that we put over on the side, nobody pays attention until there's a problem, and then everybody is shocked and amazed when things go wrong because there's not enough support, not enough attention, not enough people are involved? Now, obviously, my opinion is biased. I think that just like physical security, cybersecurity, everybody should be involved. The question is the way in which you involve people. You know, Paul brought up a good point about physical security because everybody can observe there is a problem if there's an intruder in the building. Or, you know, I live in Georgia, and Georgia is an open carry state, and the FBI will do training with you if you reach out to them on how to respond to an active shooter situation. There are all these things that people do for events and activities that they can conceptualize or that might harm them. I think the issue is that a lot of things with cybersecurity are intangible. Like, you know, how do you imagine or contemplate what in the world is the firewall doing if you're not a firewall engineer? Or, you know, what in the world is XDR doing if you're not a incident response specialist? And so part of the issue is education, getting everybody to understand, hey, what is security really doing for you? What do these controls mean? You know, how do we move away from acronyms and just plain business language that says we are going to put things in place that restrict the access that outsiders have to our environment? If I just stop there, we don't know whether we're talking about physical security or cybersecurity. So we've got to get to the point as professionals where we're communicating. And not just communicating, but communicating it effectively in terms that everybody understands. Once people understand, it's very easy to get on board. You know, I know people who hated football until they watched enough football and then they understood what people were doing on the field, that they know who to root for and what a quarterback was versus a running back versus a defensive back. What we have to recognize is that most people were not born understanding the intangible concepts that surround cybersecurity. And if you educate them properly, educated people will make good decisions. And so there is a balance between what are we telling people as professionals, how are we equipping the people that don't do this for a living to understand what we're talking about, and then collectively, HR, sales, marketing, cybersecurity, IT, business operations, the board, now everybody can be on the same page about what are the priorities, what are the issues, what are the solutions, how do we address them, and how much are we willing to spend to make sure that we have taken care of things that are important, things that are of consequence, things that are significant to the operations of the business.
That's great. So Kim, I'm going to keep this on you for a second. So you know me, we've been friends for a long time. I'm kind of a techno geek. I love my devices at home. And I was at one of your great seminars last year and this came up and I thought it still sticks with me today. So I've installed thermostats. I love the new electronics. I've got doorbell cameras. I keep on hearing about the IoT, which is Internet of Things. What things do I need to be conscientious of personally for IoT?
So because you're allowing me to give business education in our conversation, I will take us back to business school and the organizations that are creating smart home devices and all of those wonderful things that we call the Internet of Things that come from large companies like Amazon and Google and everybody else. The issue is not really the device itself. The issue is that most of those devices were not created with commercial security in mind. You know, if I have my home automation device, the type of equipment that I would use in a manufacturing plant for lighting automation and everything else is configured differently, it's built differently, it's designed to last a much longer amount of time than the things that I would put in my house for lighting and sound systems and entertainment. And so that's the key and the foundation of the problem. People are using consumer devices that are not designed for security in commercial applications. When you're using devices that are not designed for the application that they're used, now you have to manage risk by doing different things. And so some of my favorite things that work in small offices and organizations that choose to adopt these devices is just do network segmentation. You know, in my home, because I work from home because of the pandemic, I have multiple wireless networks. So my smart home devices are on one network. My personal computing devices are on another network. I have a third network that's just for business because I work with regulated industries, and I cannot have my smart TV causing a compromise that costs me millions of dollars when a $80 router with security enabled on it is going to stop all of that from happening. Now,
Mm.
there's a level of effort for adding multiple communications devices. Unfortunately, earlier in my career, I was a telecommunications specialist, but there are all kinds of resources that are available online that tell small business owners, that tell non-technical companies, how do I set up and configure multiple routers in one house? Or how do I set up and configure multiple wireless access points so that there's no cross communication between the access points? And it all boils down to two standard security principles: least privilege and separation of duties. And so I'm not allowing insecure commercial devices to even interact with my commercial devices, and I'm separating business processes from personal processes, and then just going a step further and saying, you know, at the end of the day, I really don't trust Google and Amazon and all of these smart home manufacturers to process my data. I mean, the convenience of all the smart technology is awesome. I just don't trust them to protect my data. That's my responsibility. And so I'm taking the steps that are necessary, but I'm not talking about this from the perspective of a consumer. I'm talking about it from the perspective of somebody who owns a business, who is operating the business out of my home, and I've done things that are appropriate to protect my secret sauce and my intellectual property, while at the same time protecting the data of customers who have trusted me to help them solve the problems that they're encountering.
That's great. Anything to add to that, Paul? I think you did a really great job on that.
No, that was good. Yeah, IoT. Oof, it's only going to get more complicated. So yeah, no, you nailed that one. That's fantastic.
So Paul, going on that, I'm getting a lot of people, we're working from home, whether, you know, we've got our work laptops or our trusted devices. I hear a lot about phishing attacks. I know that we're not talking about deep sea phishing, throwing in gas and things like that, but help me understand phishing attacks better.
Yeah, so you know, when we talk about phishing attacks, I was reading an article the other day, and it summed it up really well. If an organization succumbs to a phishing attack, that means that there are two failures that took place in the organization. It means the technology has failed, and it means that a person has failed, allowing this into an environment. I think when you look at phishing from that context, you know, it raises the stakes as to how we protect against phishing. You know, we're all security professionals in here, but just for posture's sake, phishing is using the method of email to gain access to an environment, whether it is someone that puts a malicious link inside of a body of an email and you click on it and you give credentials out or personal identifiable information out inside of the link, or it could be someone that is spoofing an email that it could say, you know, it could be someone saying, hey, I'm your CEO. Quick story on that. A buddy of mine works for a financial organization. It was someone in lower level finance. It was their first job out of college. They're making money. They're excited. Friday afternoon, you know, they're getting ready to go to happy hour. Someone sends the CFO sends them the note and says, "Hey, you know, I need you to send me a spreadsheet of everybody's healthcare information and routing information because I'm making a change to the way that we're going to be distributing healthcare and finance." Now, the attacker was in there for so long and knew the patterns well enough to know that this guy was new. And at the bottom of it, it said, "Now, I know that you're new here. You want to make a good impression on your boss. I expect this by 4 o'clock." Poor kid, just sent it all out, gone. Kid lost his job. Uh, really embarrassing situation that took place. So, you know, the level of these attacks that happen from a phishing perspective are pretty sophisticated. One thing I can advise people on here who are security professionals and trying to help organizations along the way, we actually help fishers out pretty well. Like we give a lot of our information out on social media, on just our social presence out there. So, you know, it's as simple as, hey, you know, someone saw that, you know, I have my Giants jersey on watching the Giants game the other day. Oh, I can target this guy with a phishing attack via, you know, knowing that he's a Giant fan. Now, if they're offering me tickets, I'm definitely not clicking on the link because the Giants stink at this point, so I'm not going to any games. But, you know, what I'm trying to tie in here is that you can coach your internal employees to be careful about how they're putting things out from a social media perspective. We just recently had the Facebook incident that took place, and everybody was freaking out because they couldn't take pictures of their hamburger that they were having at their restaurant, and grandma in North Dakota couldn't see it. But also, what happened inside of that, 1.5 billion accounts were compromised, inside of that. So now you're giving visibility to the criminal of your personal life. So when these phishing attacks do come out, it's not going to be the Nairobi imprints, or it's not going to be, the person that, your long lost uncle that wants $5,000 for a business opportunity. That's a phish. I mean, they're really going to get sophisticated with this stuff. So Q4 is traditionally a rough month for cyber attacks taking place. They know that the guards are down for people because it's holiday season, and everybody's either online shopping or they're getting ready for the holiday party and whatnot. So they know that the fences are down. I would highly encourage organizations to really use this data, use this information to keep people extra sharp, because there's more data out there than ever, and that data can be used to really compromise an organization. So making sure that when you're spreading the message, use real facts, use real data. Don't use the fear and uncertainty and doubt tactics that don't have any facts and data to back it up. Use that to curtail things. And then the last thing I'll leave on phishing: use the 3-second rule. If someone is asking you to provide information, provide data, provide a spreadsheet, give it 3 seconds and say, okay, would this person send this to me? And again, it's as simple as picking this up and firing a quick text or giving a quick call to make sure that everything is being transmitted properly inside of an organization.
Hey, Craig, if I can jump in real quick. So I had a situation with a friend that runs a nonprofit organization. I got a suspicious email from them that said to, take some action that was going to lead to my own personal destruction and the destruction of others. And so I emailed the affected person and said, hey, did you really send me this message? But the attackers were in her email. So they responded and said, yes, follow the instructions. And so one thing that I would advise when you're thinking about how do you train your employees, there are software solutions that are going to fish people to pieces. At the end of the day, it comes down to common sense, number one, but not everybody's common sense is common to everybody else. So then you also have to define good practices. For my corporate email, we have a banner so that if the message didn't originate inside the environment, everybody knows that this came from the outside. And then we have just trained everybody to say, hey, this is a fake message if it has this banner because it didn't come from the inside. But teaching people about the practices and teaching people what is the right way to do things. Even you think about things like business email compromise, where accounting professionals are constantly targeted so that they can wire money to offshore accounts that can't be recovered. If you have a practice that says this is the only way that the CEO or the CFO is going to request a wire transfer, and it is an internal form, and email is not the way that you cause that business practice to function, well, you've reduced the problem because you've reduced your risk, because you have established practices that are not susceptible to phishing, because phishing always relies upon email. Build business systems, build applications, build formal processes, have a defined way of doing things, and then just don't deviate from the processes. And that reduces a significant amount of your risk, because people aren't going to fall for a trick that leads you down a path that they know in advance is not the right way to do things.
And Paul, I knew you were not my rich uncle across the seas. I knew it. I just knew it.
And actually, my rich uncle, if he had some money for me, would call me and say, hey, I'm gonna send you something on WhatsApp. I don't have to send an email. I don't have to click on the link. My rich uncle will call me, reach out, and put the money in my pocket. And so, when people kind of like what Paul said, when you stop and think, is the person that's sending me this really trying to do it this way? The most of the compromises that involve financial fraud happen at the end of the day, or at the end of the quarter, or at the end of the week when people are busy and are in a hurry to clock out and go home like Fred Flintstone. But if none of your business processes allow you to transfer money because somebody sent an email, and it requires multiple verifications, it requires a defined workflow. Excluding email from your workflow means that nobody's going to fall victim to a phishing attack that causes people to send money.
True. I think we've got time for one more question, and then we can open up the comments. But Ken, kind of picking on you yet, talking about ransomware. This is a subject that the three of us talked about and continue to talk about. We see it in the news all the time. And at least we hear that ransomware attacks a while ago were prominently about 67 or 60 to 70% were done by phishing attacks. Now they're done by kind of brute force. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I have two thoughts really. One, I can understand that the attackers are going to change tactics because most of the cybercrime that's happening is organized. There are business criminal networks where people clock in at 5 their local time, or they clock in at 8 in the morning local time, they clock out at 5 in the afternoon. People are working on shifts. There's all kinds of data to demonstrate that the criminals are running businesses just like legitimate people are running businesses. And so part of business is to find the least path of resistance to produce the business outcome that you're looking for. And if we've spent all of our time, money, and energy to teach people about phishing, and it becomes a less effective method to deliver your ransomware, well, then the attackers are going to go somewhere else. The other part of that equation is that you never know where the attacker is going to go until they go there. And so we can't build a strategy to prevent ransomware by waiting to see what is the most common attack and then trying to put defenses in place, because then you're always running around playing whack-a-mole or trying to put out fires that are always popping up. So the thing that I would recommend, especially if you're in a smaller business or a business that has less resources, is the Center for Internet Security has a work product called the Critical Security Controls. The current version, I can't remember the version number, but if you just do CIS Critical Security Controls, they have 18 controls for cyber defense, and 5 of those controls, if you put them in place by working with the proper vendor or the proper consultant or the proper advisor, reduces your susceptibility to ransomware attacks by about 90% or more. So if you do good vulnerability management, if you have good protections on your email and web browsers, if you have good defenses against malicious software and malware, if you're training your people, and then for organizations that have technology large enough or complex enough, if you're doing penetration testing, those 5 items from the critical security controls reduce your susceptibility to ransomware by about 90%. The other thing that you can do if you are concerned about ransomware is install technology that locks your machine down if it changes too much. When people get ransomware, it's functionally the attacker is encrypting the entire device, and then they're charging you for the encryption key so that you can unencrypt it. But there are multiple software solutions that will lock the machine down if you exceed a % of change in an amount of time. So maybe I configure the software that says, if my hard drive changes more than 20% in 30 minutes, somebody's trying to apply encryption to the full drive, it locks the device down, it sets off an alert, my incident response people jump into action. Given that scenario, if I put all those controls in place, it is very unlikely that I'm going to suffer ransomware unless they figure out a way to lock my machine down without encrypting it or without changing the hard drive. And so it always goes back to what is the simplest solution to solve a problem is often the best solution, is going to be the most cost effective, is going to be the easiest to implement. And my goal here is not to sell solutions, but I know that there are multiple technology solutions that are just looking at performance monitoring and can detect that your hard drive is changing, and it is abnormal for most hard drives, unless you're doing databases or mining cryptocurrencies. Very few regular end users or business workers are going to have their entire hard drive change in a short amount of time. So it's an obvious trigger. I have good controls in place. When it happens, it isolates the machine, it disconnects it from the network. Maybe I lose one machine, but there is no reason for the entire organization to be locked down, for you to lose access to your data, for you to have an outage that causes a significant impact, that causes you ultimately to go out of business or causes you to be in the news like some unfortunate companies have been recently.
Yeah, we can offer that. That's one thing that ConnectIT does offer. Those other, I'm not going to mention all the vendors, but we have those type of solutions that we can provide. our customers and clients, which is great because it doesn't really help lock down. So I know we're running a little low on time, but gentlemen, thanks for the conversation and oversights today. The insights have been amazing. I don't have any other questions, but I'd like to provide you both the opportunity with closing comments. And let me start with you, Paul.
Sure. Yeah, this was great. Craig and Kian, thank you. I've learned stuff on this call from the both of you, and you know, what I would again encourage organizations that are on this call to do. Let's just get back to the basics when it comes to cyber and when it comes to protecting organizations. Basics of, you know, what are we trying to protect? How are we trying to ensure that our organization stays in business, that we're functioning? You know, the average response time to a cyber incident or attack that takes place to get an organization fully up and running is 283 days. That's a question I would ponder. That's a question that I would socialize inside of an organization. Can we afford to be not 100% optimal functioning for 283 days? And bringing that up to the business, that's a lot more impactful sometimes than a penetration test report. And then once you've kind of had that aha moment or uh-oh moment, take that fuel and that fire to start protecting yourself with an organization, as an organization. So thank you everybody for your attention, and humbled to have been a part of this discussion.
So I'm going to switch one more question. And Kian, sorry, you know my thought. Sometimes my best thinking is just while it's paused, but various people think they've got coverage when their cybersecurity policies. You talked about ransomware just a few minutes ago, and I'm like, hey, I'm not worried about it. My insurance is going to pay for it, and I've got plenty behind me. Is that really the case, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that is the enticement for people to come to the next session, because we can't unpack it in 2 minutes. And so what I will say in closing, and I'll touch on cyber insurance as my closing statement, is that insurance is not a risk management tool. I know they teach it. I know it comes up in cybersecurity conversations, but when you really think about what happens when you file an insurance claim, you receive an influx of financial resources for business continuity. Having insurance doesn't change the nature of the risk that you're facing. And so, Craig, I challenge you and IGI and Paul to schedule our next session, and we can have the entire panel discussion on insurance and cyber insurance and cybersecurity risk. But I do encourage people to consider what happens when you file a claim is going to provide a lot of insight about what insurance really does for you, whether you apply it to car insurance. Like, having car insurance isn't going to stop somebody from running into me, or having health insurance isn't going to stop me from getting sick. Insurance is just a tool to provide resources that you need in an emergency. You still have a responsibility to eat well, to drive safely, to put controls into place in advance, hopefully to put you in a position where you never have to file the claim in the first place. If people want to argue or debate with me, I did post my LinkedIn information in the chat. Please feel free to connect with me if we're not already connected. If it is a new connection, just say that you were part of the webinar, and I will accept immediately, and then I'll turn it over to Craig to take us to the finish line with the seconds we have remaining.
So I want to take a minute. First off, thank you, Paul, and IGI for your sponsorship and for IGI Cybersecurity. Kian, thank you very much. Class LLC offers great training. I know you have some new seminars that are coming up. I would definitely encourage the audience to take a look at those. I'd also like to thank Steve Stull from Talaris and Joanne from Digital Ignition for all your sponsorship. I think this has been a great session today. Hopefully we'll do another one very shortly. And if anybody has any other questions, we'll be responding back to a video for the people that have attended on here. And we've got the recording that we'll get out to you soon. But with that, I wanted to thank everybody for today. If they have any other questions, please feel free to email us or ping us. But thank you for your time today. And I appreciate everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig.